Hi, everybody. Hi, welcome to Juneau Park. Here we are, under the stern gaze of Solomon Juneau, all together. Yeah, it's a little awkward, but so thanks for being here as we close out the Poetry in the Park series for this season. With a fantastic lineup featuring Mathias Svalina, Krystal Languell, Jordan Dunn, and Alex Niemi. So thanks all of you for being here and reading, I assume in the future, and then thanks to everybody else and for being with us throughout the summer. We'll be back here, next summer, but in the meantime, there's a lot going on at Woodland Pattern and elsewhere, so stay tuned. I'll also mention some of those things. So moving into the announcements portion. Well, I guess before we get underway, I should, on behalf of Woodland Pattern, offer a land acknowledgement and say that we at Woodland Pattern acknowledge that in Milwaukee we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands, along the southwest shores of Michigami, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. We further acknowledge the grave evil colonialism introduced to these lands through genocide as well as slavery, but also via racist and xenophobic beliefs, laws, and practices that continue to inflict harm upon Black, Brown, and Indigenous lives. We honor those who have lived and do now at these intersections of identity and experience and are committed to the active dismantling of white supremacy. So thanks once again to those reading this evening. Thanks to you for joining us. Thanks to our sponsors for the series, who are Juneau Park Friends, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Bob Hanson. So thank you all. And hello. And hello to that chatty little pup. Other things to say, some announcements. We have a book table right here that I hope you will visit after the reading with books, as a book table tends to have. But yeah, publications by those who are reading this evening. Additionally, there are flyers for, and the flyers have a little QR code for Matthias's Dream Delivery Service, which will commence, the delivering of dreams will commence tomorrow, and if you've not already signed up to receive those dreams, either by bicycle or post, depending on where you are, where you live, where your address is, you can do so. So please visit us to receive dreams, to buy like a copy of each book at the table, maybe, and just to say hello. And then a couple things I do want to say that are coming out. So one thing is, so we do have our brunch raiser coming up, for which, well, there are no longer tickets available, so I hope you got your tickets. But if you didn't, there is still a silent auction online that you can access, or find other ways to support us via the brunch raiser, supporting your favorite, buying an auction item, supporting your favorite catwalker, or vicariously, and imagining what they might be doing, if that's the thing. But anyway, so that's going to be a fundraiser in support of a number of underfunded programs, including the Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate Program, the Milwaukee Emerging Poet Fellowship, the Alternating Currents Live Concert Series. And so if you feel inclined to support that event, and I know some of you are going to be in attendance, so that's fantastic. Another thing I want to mention, and then I will stop with the announcements, is that on Thursday, September 19th, I hope you will join us at Woodland Pattern for the Formation series for new and improvised music, and that concert in particular will feature poets reading and along to improvised musical accompaniments. So the poets reading will be Dan Nielsen, Brian Cherry, Annie Grizzle, Steve Tim, and Nicholas Michael Ravnikar, and the musicians will be Adam Murphy on clarinet, Pat Reinholtz on cello, and Paul Westfall on drums. That is Thursday, September 19th at 7 p.m. at Woodland Prater. Announcements over. Poetry will begin imminently with Alex Niemi, who is a writer and award-winning translator. Her translations include For the Shrew and Hekate by Anna Glazova, as well as The John Cage Experiences by Vincent Tholomé. She is also the author of the poetry chapbook Elephant. Her translation work has been supported by the National Endowment for the Arts and nominated for Best of the Net. And I'm so excited to welcome Alex. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Welcome to Poems. This first poem is called Retreat. Once, the knitters went to an island to learn a secret knitting stitch called braided brioche, and a young woman made them chicken marinated in Coca-Cola, and the island held a talent show that everyone was forced to attend. The boot scooters went first, matching vests, unsmiling, scooting as promised, I guess. Then some off-key singing, the usual, and suddenly a music student. The knitters fossilized into their chairs as she pulled out her violin. Would it be good? Bow arm wriggling into place and nodding her head forward like a sleepy turtle. She bansheed out the strings. The knitters complained that there was no talent on Boblo Island to accompany their craft. The lady running the retreat said, "My husband was an actor, you know." And the knitters were quelled in their appropriate admiration. The husband's dentures were very white. He didn't remember who the knitters were, and the knitters pretended not to notice. Fumbled their yarns into braids until the light failed, and scattered them to their mystery novels, fun murder, they called it, in the glow of the antique lamps. Biography. I lost my biography. It flew out of my hand when the trumpet sounded. There was an inexplicably large wooden fence, and the pages tumbled along the base of it. When every sentence had flown away, I sat on the wet ground to have a feeling to describe. The water soaked into my jeans, my underwear. I said, "I'm cold." The violin started playing. I looked behind me, and there was an orchestra. I looked behind the orchestra, and there was a stadium full of people. I turned back to the fence. I sank to the ground. I laughed with being watched. The timpani roiled. I wasn't sure why I wrote this next poem, and then I remembered I dated someone for a really long time who eventually became a political theorist, and maybe this was like pent-up feelings about that. I have no contemporary thought. Once more, he repeated that delimiting the now of contemporaneity was at the utmost. Wriggling concept clusters, that's the spirit. Tingling loins of liminality, how else could we possibly sex this life? What is the air when you could have a think tank? He orates and I boing, 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 cutting my cuticles out of my square thumb. I have a theory, I say, a crusty video mall theory, a bloody nose party theory, a gawking teen maximal angst theory, a tarmac sunsquish theory. Have you heard my theory? I ask. Swivel chair mammoth theory. Duh, the catastrophic lollipop theory. I pull out the last Lisa Frank notebook in the world from my backpack, covered in pencil shavings and eraser dust and Sour Patch birth control. He has equated the transnational with the asymmetrical, the subjectivity with the rejection of historicity. He repeats the axioms of the past and future theories. I belch into the video game void. The toggle is mine to generate over this licorice vice. Press A, sequence engaged, heroin theory. Which heroin? Which one is it? He rips the controller from my hands. Are you triumph or intravenous death theory? Rotting plotless theory, I wolf out into the night. To be fair, I probably wasn't that much fun to date back then either. Dear reader, I'm trying to be sure for both of us why you're here, instead of in a movie theater with a fake night sky, or a bowling alley with a neon fake night sky. This fake sky has 2 moons made of dryer lint. I'm sorry about that. Their dust rains down, sometimes onto you, sometimes onto the head of a squirrel. I'm not sure how aware the squirrel is of the origins of dust, but I can tell you it was invented by humans, you and me, because we wanted to have insides with no outsides, and now the outside is dust too. I'm sorry we got to this point. We're kind of both at fault here, if I'm honest. But your hair looks great, and I'm sure you'd look great under a real sky too. Life is one big party. This is based on a story that Chuck Stapleton told me, but I want to be clear that he wasn't the bird murderer in the poem. Okay? Yeah. All right. Anyone that knows Chuck knows he would never. Okay. Life is one big party. This is the 3rd ad I've accidentally clicked on today. Personally, I'm a late bloomer, so my website isn't selling anything. At a party, this woman said that when she sees a house sparrow, she just pops its head off. And then she flicked her thumb the way you open a Pez dispenser. I don't know why, but I thought of violence like one long crack in the sidewalk. I don't know why, but I thought of when I was 5 and the old red station wagon gave out on the highway, and my mom screamed, "It's gonna blow!" I thought of running down the median. The grass was yellow and dry, the sky was blue, and I crushed a lot of plants with my light-up sneakers. The sparrow lady reached her arm over the vegan snacks. She pointed out the window. "Look," she said, "there's one of those little fuckers now." How does human height influence the probability of strength? The tall girl really missed being sad all the time, she said, before she was sad all the time. She has a soul attachment hanging from the back of her like a braid. You are free at any time to cut your finger open, she says. She looks down. She drinks a lake. Her cheeks are so red, and her boyfriend wants her to open a gastropub. It's so much fun to cut your hair off. Have no fear, she says. There are 2 adorable brothers, and you can only marry one for health insurance. The tall girl is blue in the light of her phone. On the phone, there's a woman with a hand in her handbag that isn't hers. This last poem is a list poem, and I was thinking, what if every word was someone's name? And then I thought, what if you had no choice and you just had to go in alphabetical order through the dictionary? And then I thought, what would happen if you had twins? So this is possible names for twins if every child were named in alphabetical order from the dictionary. Hello, these are my children, Fleecy and Fleet. Hello, these are my children, a la mode and alarm. Hello, these are my children, macaroni and macaroon. Hello, these are my children, luxury and luxury goods. Hello, these are my children, tidal wave and tidbit. Hello, these are my children, uninvited and uninviting. Which one would you want to be? Hello, these are my children, wishful thinking and wishy-washy. Hello, these are my children, X chromosome and X coordinate. Hello, these are my children, Zeppelin and Zero. Hello, These are my children, ream and reanimate. Hello. These are my children, goad and go ahead. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. I could have used those baby name ideas like a while ago, but okay, very excited to welcome next Jordan Dunn, who is the author of Physical Geography as Modified by Human Action, as well as various chapbooks and ephemeral prints including Common Names, Reactor Woods, and A Walk at Doolittle State Preserve. A second collection, Notation, is forthcoming from Third Hand Books. He lives with his family in Madison, Wisconsin, where he edits and publishes Oxeye Press, tremendous Oxeye Press. Jordan, welcome and thank you so much.
Can you hear me okay, Mike? I'm going to read one section from this book Notation that's coming out. It's a 70-page poem, essentially, one long line. It's divided into 16 small sections. I'm going to read one of those. They're dated. The first section is from 4/15/21, and I'm going to read from 4/14/22. I guess I should say that it's composed of many intertexts, including a number of poets who are in the audience tonight. So see if you recognize your own writing. When I look back through a thicket of time, I grow satisfied not by the plain texture of my life's story, not by the secure structure of its becoming, but by the sheer unreliability of its patterning. As if my self divides, but I remain unaware of its division until I return to my starting point. The writing near the end of the start of this same composition 1 year ago, the sentence becoming a year-long sentence that is about to loop back onto itself through the imagination of its traceability. I desire completely to be transported inside the text, to take up residence there, the way one may for a long time stare into a photograph and actuate the contours of its prior reality that somehow brushes against the present. With such startling intensity, the interval evaporates beyond the serviceberry flowering on the hillside above me. Bloodroot and spring beauties blossoming below the kinglets. The minor whitewater sound of the river as it runs across a wide scattering of stones. The memory of the writing fading and growing with intensity as the clouds come and go, and I find my footing upon the trail, where there is nothing profound, where there is no profundity in the long-beaked sedge. Only this song of visibility to carry further into the day, as I remember the various forms of assignment I have given myself to justify the splendid non-being of my mind in relation to the cottonwoods. The corona has shrunk to twice the size of the moon, and there is nothing left to type from the notebook, as I take off my reading glasses to watch 2 milkweed seeds unfolded from the bundle of seeds in an open milkweed pod, but still attached, lift and fall in the breeze. The text blurring every time I turn my eyes back to the screen, and the seed inside the looser pod becoming, to my accustomed eyes, sharper and more central. Jordan said in the space of reading Austerlitz, he couldn't sleep and was trying to give up the notion of the loss of place. When at 9 from Marquette to Antioch, when at 9 he moved from Marquette to Antioch, a coincidence of time and place that joined the day to a particular landscape and left it lost in the new one. Also, Owen is 8, soon 9, and they might move also, revisiting the coincident loss on the child, which patterned for me the mimicry of desire, that is, the desire to go outside and become a thing in the world, despite already being a being in the world, the desire to be more than oneself through the observation of the outer world, and its way of becoming internalized through this music we bring forward to the moment of composition. It is good that a year still feels like a long time, my sense of who I am now not being entirely coincident with who I was then, a promise for the possibility of change, that I am no longer recognizable to myself in the present moment, looking back at myself in a previous time. This thought inscribed onto the page causes me to pause, stand up, and approach the bedroom window, where I look down onto the garden that I was writing about only a few moments ago, it being summer in the poem's garden, but not in the world. I fetch a field knife to harvest arugula and beet greens, and as I kneel down to cut the tallest plants in the row, I notice how clean and fresh the leaves are from yesterday's rain. The leaves had lain down upon the straw after the shower, only to rise up again in the morning sun that now streams through the kitchen window as I open the patio door and step inside. Fill up a canning jar with water to hold tall stems of spearmint that will keep well in the ambient air for several days or more. Although the season is now quickly shifting as the snowfall melts and the Carolina wren mixes its caroling with the high song of the chickadee. Soon vultures will arrive, tipping their long wings to soar high on thermals above the river valley. Snow trillium will part the browned leaves on the forest floor. Nettles will appear beside the creek. The season will shift fully, and this moment will be its own retrospect along the cascading overfills of beauty and its interlays of grief. But most musicians can't hear a single sound. They listen only to the relationship between two or more sounds. Music for them has nothing to do with their powers of audition, but only to do with their powers of observing relationships. There's a gap in the classroom discourse that allows the outside world to start trickling in as I walk to the window that overlooks the canopy of several oaks. And after a long period of silence, I offer the question, what is the author trying to say here? Which is met by more silence, until finally a student at the back of the room answers that there's a difference between listening and doing. Is that a little strong, I'm wondering? Interlays of grief. I can't really concentrate any longer. I'm tired, that's all I know, and everyone else is tired. Yet the poem continues, and I open Daniel Vogel's book to read, "We come to language as architects of relation, but sentences are not secure. We take them up as planks and make unstable geometries. A book arrives in threads." It being a book about bird nests, and also the way language and memory combine to form nests, interweaving hundreds of strands of various materials, sometimes human-made materials like newspaper or book scraps where words are printed, or leftover linen thread that would bind a book together. The question of whether the robins in my backyard would build a nest out of thin strips of poems, reminding me of Lisa's poem. Now when I brush my hair, I take the hair out of the brush, and instead of putting it in the compost container on the sink, I put it outside in the grass for birds to find and use. While I was writing the previous lines, I originally removed the quotation marks around the writing from April 15th, 2021, and considered whether or not those lines maintained a fluidity that was desirable only a few moments ago as I read those lines without their borders into the air of the room where I now find myself. Then I again inserted the quotation marks around last year's writing, it having been, for a brief period, this moment's writing, before deleting the following passage. Being only myself, it appears, that I can inscribe upon the page, despite the distances I create between myself and the text. It is obvious in this sounding out that I become nothing more than the words. And I've decided that this is problematic and slightly off-key, following the line, "Through this music we bring forward to the moment of composition." But now I find myself quite uncertain about both of those choices as the wind gusts and the red buds of the red maple bend forward in their reddening. As I crouch to examine the large flowered bellwort rising from a wreath of trout lily and hepatica leaves, its yellow flowers drooping at the end of thin stems. And as I lean further to see if I can view the inside of the flower without propping it up, my ear nearly touches the ground as my cheek brushes the ephemeral leaves from which the bellwort rises. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Next, a pleasure to welcome Krystal Languell, who lives in Chicago, where she works as a nonprofit administrator. She's the author of 4 books of poetry, most recently Systems Thinking with Flowers, selected by Rae Armantrout as the winner of the first Phonograph Editions book contest and published in early 2022. Krystal, thank you so much for being here, and welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. I'm passing around a little card that informs the audience that I'm pregnant. My husband made these cards for me, and he made 150, so I have to start giving them out. So anyway, let's get that out of the way. Thanks. Thank you. All right, so I have a few things I want to do. The next thing, so that was the first. So the next thing I want to do is acknowledge that this person to my side here is tolerating us in their space. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you. And now on to the show. I want to just read a couple little snips of ephemera, and then I'll read a few things from the most recent book, and then see where we are on that. It's ephemera. You don't have to explain. Okay. So. Really good to see Anselm this week at baseball games and be reminded that writing doesn't have to be about anything. It can be a vibe. It can be left to no one to determine. I was cleaning out my birdhouse. Poetry is allowed to be unfriendly. Part of the joy is its formal ability to close up like a clam. I've eaten a fair amount of birthday cake. Sorry about the gory details, that's just my gory life. I believe I called Poet's House a clam shack of an institution. In response to an article at Hyperallergic, they beheaded the Virgin Mary and they took her head away. On the one hand, she was inaccurately pale-skinned. They could have thrown paint over her nudity to confer modesty. But more offensive to them than the vagina was the face, the look of pain. Do they take it as an accusation? The head removed, the body in labor remains. All there is and ever will be. Oh yeah, this detail. Last night I dreamed I was being chased by buffalo. The Gretel Ehrlich book reveals that she doesn't know anything about the moon. More than once she refers to the light cast by the new moon. Why should I trust her on other topics? Chatted up by a dude at Texas Roadhouse. Killed 2 ticks in the house today, so if I die of a fever, that was why. What happened to the Asada backlist? I'm watching a deer graze from my desk. Getting Charlie horses during my nap. My embryologist is playing Candy Crush. Oh, that's a good one. Dreamed I was trying to fly out of Budapest with my friends from that time, and 2 of the boys were detained because their hair didn't match their passport photos. They'd grown long hair and both had it in French braid pigtails. All right, cool. That's just a little nonsense. Oh, I thought that was a magnet. Maybe that's not metal. Nothing is magnetic anymore. Has anyone noticed that? It's just me. A few poems from the phonograph book. You can't quit me, I'm fired. My war got set late, tongue bitten in sleep. Any dune material likewise. Driving home, we heard darkness on the edge of town, on the edge of town. Apocalyptic romp attempt, the same white spider I kept smashing and smashing. All hours I used it as an excuse for bad behavior. I counted 3 broken mirrors. Can that be possible without 2 3-legged dogs in sight of 1 volcano-mulched sugar maple? Believe the lie. Little X-Files reference. Logging in or logging out. Slice of pizza for me. You shouldn't even visit. And I ask, which 2 worlds are those? My nature vocabulary is burgeoning. I feel summed up. I feel compacted. His tactical shift, same as the racists use. It's good I didn't get what I wanted. I wish. I'm not good at memorizing much. Besides, they also serve who only stand and wait. The daffodillies fill their cups with tears. And wife in a Subaru putting on moisturizer. This poem is called Don't Be Put Off by the Irrelevant Information, which is a note that Sandy Berrigan typed on a postcard she sent to me once upon a time. Sandy was Ted's first wife. You can learn more about her in the book, Dear Sandy, Hello. So she had donated she did textile work. I assume she still does. I haven't heard from her in a while. And donated some stuff to a Belladonna collaborative fundraiser, and so that's what she was sending. That's why we were corresponding. And she just reuses everything, so it was like a postcard from like an art book show, and she wrote her note on a typewriter in between the lines of the postcard, and then that was part of her message. Don't be put off by the irrelevant information. So that's up on my wall, obviously. Quite a milestone, like a birthday. High stakes searches on, some crucial element missing. A figure who, half asleep, must be found, represents completion. Sometimes the clothes fall off where a crowd moves around. My problem might kill me, but I want to keep the secret. Who is steering this half-drunk ship? One enemy, taking away something I need to finish the task. Blasphemous, etc. The theme was humor, so we knew we needed to laugh. Mother of pearl, the part that yields purple milky shine, a bruise in the seagrasses, hinge clasping, 2 scallops, not so mathematical, a technical sketch, a mystery shape. The training kicks in, seeking end to the obstacle, heist to resolve, the noticing netted, a request to act softer. Coral is a color. Coral is not a gemstone. The retroactive acceptance, a long row of overflowing toilets. Frankly, low-quality materials here. Fool's gold. This is really classy, right? I'm not going to read the funny one. All right. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Just get out of there and forget about it, Alexis insists about New York City. Driving through some boneyard carnage, the spooky sunset comes clear through. I'm keeping a bowl of water under my bed because the cat likes to drink there. Make sure your hands are clean. Find a half-eaten cookie very casually. When I babysat last decade, I had plastic grapes in my back seat for years. I set a password for a game about penguins. The real hayseeds call it an ink pen. My friend wrote about me giving her pills, and I've got other friends I get different pills from. But if you already know who to trust, stop me. I can't teach you anything useful. The pain seemed so minor for so long. Lying on my side, tears leaked out, not crying. Competence is not a personality. Get out of there and forget about it. I think I'm going to read one more from the book and then a couple scraps, similar in style to the first scraps. Then we'll have come full circle. So this poem is called Pardon My French, But You're an Asshole. Very good. All right, pardon my French. Pull a loose hair out of my bra. What do I have to show for it? A better set of pens might be the perfect thing. She was grieving on a yacht on Instagram. That doesn't concern anyone you'd know. Oh, how I hate to quit. I've hated the act. I was suddenly in a spelling bee and given a long word. Sandy said they all did what they needed to do, which is almost as backhanded as when I said I hoped everyone got what they deserved. Knowing which acts drove me to choose wrongly does not help my mood. This should be queued up over here, so it shouldn't be a big fumble. Except now a bunch of crap's beeping. There it is. Okay, yeah, that'll be fun. Okay. Just a couple little bits and bobs from this piece that's in progress. I don't know what's going to happen. The title is The Poetry Firm. Suffering at the poetry firm was general. The working conditions were worse, closer to the center of power in the logic of science fiction. Called into the little god's kingdom, I took dictation on every outlandish complaint and behavior. Unbearable. The complainant who was found in a puddle of vomit cut me out of the poem-a-day email thread. She ignored my official request to join the book club. Is that what a target on one's back means? I fantasize about replying on any social media post by the institution, but is the policy against laughter in the library still in place? It's clear that her job isn't the most important thing in her life, my former boss said, intending to critique the target. A little illustration of a man getting his necktie stuck in the shredder warns users not to let their ties dangle over the machine while in operation. After she announced her retirement, I pulled the framed photo of Thomas Sayers Ellis out of the coat closet, removed the print, and carefully, happily, shredded his portrait. Thanks. The Big Cheese was proud that the magazine had never missed an issue, not even through World War II. I heard him repeat the fact to visitors, and what a crummy point of pride. A pause can express care. My co-conspirator described the crowd at the anti-racism training for nonprofit professionals as the white women's mafia. Good luck Googling that. All that comes up is sexy Halloween costumes. My good boss gave her notice and the board brought in a man as an interim replacement. He worked remotely from a different time zone and only ever made reference to his local time. You can probably guess which one he was in. I guess Eastern, obviously. Blah, blah, blah. These editors changed the policies and now they celebrate their own little writing in their cold little performance space. The same staff stepped over the 7 extension cords up and down the white carpeted staircase when the administrative team was required to hang grow lights nightly for the non-native and sickly 12-foot bamboo plants. No one ever offered to help us. The bamboo stunk as it rotted in place. Thanks. I made someone scream. Perfect.
Krystal, thank you so much. And to close things out, I'm very excited to welcome Mathias Svalina, who is the author of 8 books. Most recently, Thank You, Terror, published by Big Lux Books. His first short story collection, Comedy, will be published later in 2024. Svalina was a founding editor of Octopus Books and has led writing workshops in universities, libraries, community spaces, and in prisons. Since 2014, he has run a dream delivery service, traveling around the country to write and deliver dreams to subscribers. With that service, he has worked with the Denver Museum of Contemporary Art, the Poetry Foundation, the University of Arizona Poetry Center, and has been featured on NPR's Morning Edition, Hyperallergic, and BBC World News. And we're delighted to have Mathias in Milwaukee for an extended stay, and just tonight, too, for a reading. Welcome, Mathias.
Hi, thank you for being here among the bats and the lightning bugs and the poets. And thank you all, everybody connected to Woodland Pattern, for having me. It's an honor to be here and associated with this cathedral of poetry. For the last 10 years, I've worked on 2 things, and one of them is the dream delivery service, in which I've written something like 40,000 dreams for subscribers, and the other thing is this book called Thank You, Terror. And I'm going to bounce back and forth between those 2 caches of poems. All the poems from Thank You, Terror are called Thank You, Terror. All the dreams are called A Dream. Thank you, Terror. There is no loneliness in noise, no lies in a stylus. When the banjo sings and the voice sings, a song becomes a dawn. Let us live just for each other in life's weary struggle here. Let us have faith. Let it pour from us like dirt, like a song that ends in the moment it begins. I put these markers in my book to mark out the poems to read, but my hands are shaking too much to find them. Thank you, Terror. We thank the world by living. We pray in rust and suture, in pistol and pine. This ruined world, my only prayer. If I can't love it for you, if I can't love it for us, if I can't love it for me, I will love it for someone I've never met. This is, I'm having a lot of trouble. Thank you, Terror. Break your life and break the pieces into smaller pieces, and break your hands and break your body until you've broken all you know. And kiss the wood still warm from the tree. There is a gap. The war never ended. The dead are alive. Steal the horses from the factory and ride them in brokenness. Your heart is a hatchet. and what is empty will one day not be empty. Thank you, terror. I was dead, but they kept killing me. By the seaside, by the super target, on a plane, in a beetle's husk. My arms stretched wide, but could not find my eyes. I won't betray you. I won't betray you, I say again and again. But where is the sonnet of power? Where is the sonnet of suffering? And when the skin comes off, it comes off like a shower curtain. And when there is joy like a dirt road. You do not get to pick your oracle. You only know your weaknesses. This is for all the fans of Eric Baus. Thank you, terror. Baus and I are catcalling families as we drive through Georgia, like, nice family, very supportive, very good complexions. I want to chronicle the bulk of the suffering and joy, but just because others pronounce the word one way does not give you providence over the petty problems and Susquehannas of the dark. This here is my dream house, fuckface. I'm riding shotgun with the bats where the world dangles all the anguish you can handle that makes you drink another glass of room temp water from the tap. I'm thinking of the last time I ran into Bill Cassidy in Williamsburg and we were both like, we should hang out soon. But New York being the what that it is, we knew that we probably would not. And then Jules telling me he'd killed himself and her telling me this at the AWP conference. And we wept and looked at stacked books on sale for the table of the University of California Press. I picked up a book and opened it at random, but each page was blank. And when I put the book down, I had no lines in the palms of my hand and no hole into which I would not drown. And didn't I envy Bill his strength of will then? I did envy his ability to empty an entire house. I'd like to run into Bill once more and do something to ease his suffering, give him a hug or listen to him or prop him up in a good suit with a nice family, very supportive, nice complexions, riding matching mountain bikes through a Georgia suburb, or empty my bank account into whatever he needed to put inside his body to stay alive one more day in a world where he is loved. But instead, I'm crying on this airport, and there's airplane, and there's a baby crying too. And I can't tell my tears from the baby's screams, and soon this whole plane load we will weep ourselves into steel poles and sit atop them like ghosts, which is all to say I fear I'll see Bill one day in the distance, instantly recognizable but wearing white gloves, is all to say I've got a blind spot shaped like a body-shaped hole in my heart. And who is Sleep's ear? Who's keeping all these debts? When I get home, I'm reading everything in my bookshelves on fire. I'm going to keep it all in until the alarm rings and ceases ringing. I'm going to burn the world back into a coke binge, into a compound city, into a single word. All I want to write about is suffering. All I want to write about is salvation. There is room, but you do need to make the world each day. And you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. I dropped my dreams. A dream. A crying stranger rushes to you and hands you some papers. What are these, you say? It's our divorce papers, the stranger says. The divorce is now finalized. Tears roll from the stranger's eyes. But we were never married, you say. We never even met before. I know, the crying stranger says. That's what makes this all so sad. A dream. Someone has stolen the thing you love most. You are surprised because what the thief stole, you did not think that this was what you loved most. If someone had asked you what you loved most, you would not have said that it was this thing. But now that the thief has stolen it, you understand from its absence it is the thing you love most. You wander around town, looking at the dumpsters, checking pawn shops, asking strangers, hoping to find the thing you love most. You get some good intel from a few cool snails and head to the bluffs overlooking the river. The thief is there, standing at the edge of the bluffs, their back to you. You walk up and stand beside the thief, listening to white water thunder over the rocks, watching clouds slip into and twist out of existence. You took from me the thing I love most, you say to the thief. No, the thief says, I didn't. That's not how love works. The thief hands it back to you, the thing you love most. But when you have the thing back, you do not once again feel the love. Even with the thing you love most in your hands, you feel the absence of love. How do I get it back? You say, how do I get back the love? The thief hands you an armful of tangled yarn. Here, the thief says, it's up to you. You need to make it out of this. You hold the armful of yarn close to you. It is heavy, heavier than you would have thought. Do I have to do it now, you say? The thief says, no, not now, but soon. How will I know when I finish? The thief says. And the thief says, you won't. Flub the ending there, I'm sorry. I'll go back to clown school. A dream. You are in clown school. Learning juggling and unicycling, pantomime and buffoonery. You have advanced to upper levels of the clown school curriculum, working on theory of clown and clownetics and critical clownery. In one class, you must clown a mango on a bare table without touching the fruit, without saying the word mango. The true clown is inside, your instructor repeats as she strides through the room. In the next class, you have a guest lecturer, a clown who's been clowning for 80 years. The instructor introduces the old clown, and the old clown walks to the podium. You and the other students applaud politely. The old clown moves the podium to the side of the room and sits on a wooden stool. He pantomimes a mirror before him. Pantomimes looking at himself. Pantomimes examining each wrinkle and flaw until you and the other clown students become his mirror, the nexus of the old clown's anxieties. And then the old clown pantomimes removing clown makeup from his face. He wipes his hand on his face, and his face disappears, the far wall visible right through him. He mimes wiping his face again, and his nose and right eye disappear. He mimes wiping his face again, and there goes his cheek and his ear, until he has no face at all. Then he moves to his neck and chest, working his way down, wiping away his body until he has erased his entire self in the mirror of your gaze. And it is not until he has entirely disappeared that you feel you are somehow heavier, more weighted with this world you always knew you were a part of, but never wanted to be a part of. A dream. Your loved one has died, and you are given the option of burial, cremation, or dandelion. You choose dandelion. The next day you return for the remains, a single dandelion, the top a white halo of seed. You step outside, and the wind pulls the seeds from the dandelion, one by one. This is the last poem. It's a little longer, and it's for the dark. This is an elegy for my friend Matt Henriksen, who some of you maybe knew, who was a beautiful poet and publisher and kind of an asshole in the way that we're all kind of assholes, you know, that none of us are good. And that's where we start, and that's why art and love are important, because we're able to hold each other. So this is for Matt. Thank you, Terror. Ashes fall, but there is no smell of smoke, no buildings in flames, no flames at all. I hold out my hand and the ashes pass through me, falling to the cement, not stopping at the cement, going down, down to where that part of any one of us that has never stopped moving can finally rest, to a place beyond a need for understanding, a dark where there's no border between what is known and what we write in ink when asked to sign our names on the contract of the self. What do we do with this darkness? If there is a meaning to all this flesh and breath, I want it to arrive how the geese arrive onto the surface of the lake with their awkward, squawking need to be recognized. To be how the wind shimmers itself into being on the surface of the lake, to be the surface of the lake. If there is holiness, it is not on any altar or in any prayer or any words, but in the empty space between things. At 16, I would have joined any cult, would have followed anyone who merely smirked, much less smiled at me, would have stepped into any blue hole and sank to the water's bottom where muck rises to block the light. Time moved through me without stopping. My life, a prayer, a floating fluff, water spilling over rocky cliffs, the rivers all too wide to swim, everything graced with the faint stink of gasoline and pine, each smile, each breath, like a hole in the dirt someone else has dug and into which I must eventually fit my body. But there are times when night drinks itself, when all the friends have arrived, turning old water back to stone, to a story you tell all night, interrupted by 1,000 side stories, 1,000 little jokes and rooting memories, cynical smiles, until everyone thinks you've forgotten the story, thinks you're lost in an equal fascination for each thing, each idea, each memory, all the trees' hairy roots spreading through the dirt, yet all still one tree. Everyone thinks you're just drifting out in the stars now, in those distant lights that are of no use to us, but which we cannot refuse to ignore, until all the stories come back together into one story, and you finish telling the story, in which all of those who are lost can rest. I hold this memory with too much clarity for it to have been true. A sentence translated from a dead lake. I was in Brooklyn to read for summer's reading series with Josh, who had met a month earlier when he slept on my couch in Nebraska alongside Noah, who would one day be married to, and then divorced from Summer, and would die alone in a hotel room in Kansas. And there that night on my couch in the Midwest, the winter night so cold the pipes froze and water flooded my basement apartment and its stacks of books and records, and piles always falling over, leaning into one another in search of an architecture, a need to be found, a need to be held, part of some new arrangement of stars and idea and water and night. And then that night in Brooklyn, you and I had gotten a beer somewhere, and so we were late, rushing to Pete's for the reading, arguing some sloppy and vital detail of how to pray the shadows off the cave walls of one's eyes. And we pass a woman sitting on the sidewalk, and you say, "Oh, that's Julia Cohen." And Julia gets up and joins us, and we keep arguing and laughing, and in a few months, Julia and I will meet again, and we will fall in love. And she will look at me with so much love that the love undoes me with its terrible light. And the only thing that kept me alive then was her love. The ashes were falling even then, Matt, from cloudless skies of memory, from sunlight's punchlines, from the rabbit light and the cream part and the statics of an internet that had not yet reached its inevitable price tags, from the awls and threads with which we transmuted stolen photocopies into books, and 26-hour drives from the Midwest to Brooklyn, stopping only for gas and mouthfuls of starlight, swimming through the still lake of the night from Budgies in Newton, Kansas, to a bowling alley in Maryville, where Josh handed me a scratch ticket and asked me if I was feeling lucky. And when I scratched the gray layer off with a nickel, what lay beneath was the most ordinary of tombs, a hallowing darkness, faint and faithful and drizzling ash. I'm needy. I know. I know the distance we each hold inside, load-bearing and bereaved by its own architecture, and I know the only way to lure the distance out is with a story that never ends, and how life grants us fewer and fewer of those stories each day. It was as if a whole life was set up in that one walk, you guiding, squinting through light's purgatorial delivery, arguing in your way that presumed you were always right, me arguing in my way that presumes I'm always wrong. You had a certain smile, though, that you'd smile when you'd felt I finally got some point right. I hated that smile, its beauty. It's okay, you told me once, years later, when we were arguing about some poet or another. I love a bunch of bad art, too. We never know what character we are in another story, or even if we are one. When I heard you died, I thought of that morning you took me the long way back to your apartment in Fayetteville to show me an empty lot in which people tossed their trash, but in which wildflowers grew, taller than both of us, the morning already thick, and you said something like, I don't know, I thought you'd like this kind of bullshit. You seemed almost embarrassed to show me, embarrassed I would love something so obvious. I hadn't thought about that morning in years, yet there it was, waiting for me. At the surface of a lake, I could wrap around myself for warmth. Maybe we moved toward death by running from life, the sidewalks cobblestoned with sleeping songbirds, their chests rising and falling like spinning pennies, the parks comprised of stacked up blacktop, the wound always wandering through the lake of the self, from skin to bone to mind to muck, like a train dragged by a tractor through the grayed slush of a winter morning in which the sun will never make itself knowable. Maybe the only thing we have is this shared need for what cannot be found, guided by a map in which all the streets have slipped into bird song, each song rippling over the other, forming a single song that hides each origin and perpetually expanding ripples across the lake. We need each other. We are each other. There is no such thing as a self disconnected from the others, and that self is the only thing I know to be holy. A prayer that works like the surface of water, like the memory of water on your calves, the water drying your skin tight in the sun with a faint halo of salt or ash. And I did, of course, love that empty lot filled with trash and flowers, and I'd like to think you did too. You walked ahead of me, head kind of bowed, kind of bobbing like a boxer or a boat in the wake of a distant ship. The darkness came off you in waves, darkness tangling and rooting with darkness, the whole mess of it. I grabbed handfuls of the darkness and spun. It keeps growing, I said. You shook your head and laughed, again embarrassed for me, for my excitement, embarrassed for how beautiful a fucking world this stupid fucking world is. Oh Lord, the old prayer goes, make me less curious. No longer let the swarming ants on the sidewalk mean more than any book could. No longer let the breeze blow through the pines. No longer let a word linger liquid in its own pools of need. Oh Lord, protect me from the swollen leaves that clog the drainage ditches, from the tense of the rust on my fingerprints, from the ache of the day in my broken teeth. It feels antique to think one might escape from suffering, that there might be a reason for all this glitter and chasm. It feels naive to hope there might be a way out. But what if there is? This darkness isn't going anywhere. It was here before us, and it'll be here when all these homes of pressboard and drywall have ground down to sea glass, the lake rising like one unblinking eye, always shattering but never shattered. I dream we are driving up to our own funeral in some old broken Mazda, dressed a bit too fine for the occasion, and that dream sinks into another dream about a horse, and that dream into another, each tangling into the roots of another story, up late listening to Doc Boggs, trees growing through the building, roots reaching down into the dark from which we take our first breaths, where everything is holy and nothing the only test, where the starlight is only starlight and there is no shame in rest. Thank you for listening.
Matthias, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And once again to Alex, to Jordan, to Krystal. One more time for everybody. Thank you all. Thanks to you all for being here tonight and throughout the summer. We'll be, back here again in June, but in the meantime, find us at Rhythm Pattern. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks.